Hello and welcome to this week's video covering Sorare by myself, Chris from Sorare on a Budget. This week I'll be recapping the players from last week's video, my take on the ETH drop, what it's meant to me personally, and then looking at 3 teams built on players from different budgets. So let's get started. So first and foremost, I'll have a wee look at last week. Last week we looked at 12 different players, all J-League based, as that's where my research has all been based around. All 12 players played, which is fantastic, no DNPs. As you can see from the wee chart here, you could see that some of the players did play for 90 minutes, some of them were substitutes. You can also see the wide variety of scores, some only scoring 19 and some scoring as high as 70. The key takeaway from that for me was, if you do your research, and all my research was based around the players that had played 100% or very close to of their last 15, because that just meant there was a bigger chance and more likelihood of those players playing, and also basing it around an average score that they'd had. So had we picked 4 of those players that scored the highest, that being Ogawa as a defender, Amano as a midfielder, Maezawa as a midfielder, and Nagai as a striker, he actually did start, but he went off injured. Got an assist and a score of 70, so he contributed to our cause. If you'd have bought those 3, you're looking at well over 120 points. Sorry, not 120 points, 220 points, which would put you well on course with a goalkeeper, be it common or if you have an actual goalkeeper, then be well on course to hit the 250 points to get the higher threshold, which would have returned almost 20% of what you would have invested. Now, the prices that I've got listed here as the current price, that was from my chart that I put onto the Twitter page on Monday. So obviously everything's changed since then in terms of the value of ETH, which has then led to different prices. However, the one thing that has remained constant is the fiat level, the pound, the euro, the dollar level of what those prices, those players are actually worth in terms of real currency. Which leads me nicely on to my next topic, which was the big drop. The last 2 or 3 days had been a bit of a roller coaster. Obviously last week, I think it was last Wednesday, it hit an all-time high, and everybody was all peaches and cream. And then in the space of a couple of days, everything seemed to collapse. I was, quite honestly, a little bit frantic about it. I felt as though everything that I'd done was going to be washing away because the ETH had dropped, and being quite panicked, and oh my god, what does this mean to my player values? What does this mean to all the money I've invested? And what it actually meant was I had worried about an awful lot of nothing. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously if you're invested into Ethereum on its own, it's been a horrible few days. However, we are playing in Sorare, and Sorare seems to, this is the first time I've experienced a drop. I've only been in since the end of March in terms of funding, and it's, apart from one minor dip, which you can see at the start of that graph there, I've not experienced a big drop off like the last few days. What it has shown me, however, is that the market really does react, and it really does react in terms of the fiat value of your players. So I had always had a value against my players of my pound value, because obviously I'm in Scotland, so it's a pound value that I allocate to my players. Now, I had always allocated that against where I thought they were and what their value is to me, as well as the market. And what I found in the last 24 hours in particular is that the market reacted to what the players' values were. The ETH cost of the players in the game increased, and it stayed constant with the pound value. So what that's meant to me is I no longer stress and sit and look at apps and see what the ETH's doing, because as my money is invested into Sorare, I don't have any concerns as to what that's doing out with. If it goes back up, I know that means that the ETH price in the game for players will adjust because the pound value will stay the same roughly. It'll go up based on the players' performances and go down conversely if they're playing poorly. However, their values are their values. I was particularly worried when the scene, obviously, it dropped about 50% at one point. It has gone back up. So I'm not going to dwell on this too much longer. It's basically just to say, if you were concerned about it, if you're frantic or you're thinking about selling out because oh my god, my club's not worth as much as it was, it is. It really does base around the actual pound value of the players. That to me has been my biggest takeaway from this whole thing. The market reacts and it does balance itself back out over the course of a couple of days in terms of what the value of those players are. So moving on from there, because really it's an irrelevant topic, but I wanted to touch on it because it did affect me personally. I did worry about it quite a lot, and now I don't worry about it at all, pretty much. So, this week's topic. So what I've done this week for a little bit of a change, last week we looked at really kind of low budget players, all under sort of 0.03, trying to build a squad for under 0.1 and what have you. So this week I have decided to do 3 teams based around the J League. As I say, that's the league that I've focused on, it's the league I've done my research in, and there's multiple reasons for that, which I'll go into at some point. The 3 budgets, 0.1 ETH, these are all roughly, some of them are slightly over, some of them are slightly under, but 0.1, 0.2 and 0.3, just to have a look and see obviously players at different ranges, recommend some players that might be worth taking a look at, and also interestingly to see which one of the 3 budgets actually wins, comes out on top in terms of who has the most points. So first team is the underdogs. Now you will see this is a rare picture of Samir Handanovic. I have 3 goalkeepers that are playing that are all common, and I have Handanovic, but for whatever reason his picture, albeit on my phone or on my laptop, they all come up with an error for the picture, so I've used a rare picture. But each of these 3 teams is going to have a common goalkeeper, and it's allocated from my roster of players, and that's purely so I can try and keep track of the scores to make it fair. So with the underdog team, I'm taking a gamble. Rather than going playing safe and going with maybe 2 defenders, I've actually gone with 2 midfielders on this one, just to try and squeeze out a little bit more of points. Now it could backfire spectacularly, but again, all the player research that I've done is based around have they played, what's their average scores, and what who they're playing, that sort of thing. All the prices are based off as of this morning. Obviously the market is very fluid. These cards may go up, they may go down, but I have allocated sort of pound price ranges to look at with them. If you are looking to pick up any of these players and pick up either a bargain or somebody that is a consistent scorer. So Handanovic will be the goalkeeper for team number 1. He's sitting on a -42 penalty, but that's fine. He does tend to get a decent score, so he'll probably come in with at least about 20 to 30 points that will count towards the team. So player number 1. Now, full disclosure, Misal is a player in my team. I've owned him for about 4 weeks now. He's played every week, bar last week when I took a chance on Kamar Lawrence. But nobody told Kamar Lawrence that the game had kicked off, it looked like, with his very low score. So the first defender, Yuto Misal, he is from Oita Trinita. His last 5 games, he's averaging 47. Now he's an ever-present for the last 5 games, and I think he's missed 1 in the last 14. The lowest market price for him is 0.028, which is roughly about £65. In terms of his value. The values I've based on are either the lowest market or the lowest market and a combination of the last few days, just to get an idea of where the price and the value in the player is. The bonus on this one was 2.5, and it's obviously a 2020 card, but somebody's obviously built up the bonus attached to that again. And he, roughly in my club, I've got him valued at about £80. I've got a 2021 card, which obviously adds a little bit of a premium because it's got a much higher percentage attached to it. He is a very consistent player. He seems to score roughly 45 points every week, and when you're working with the budget, that's a great starting point for your defence. So you're about to see some names that you'll have seen last week, but these guys are budget guys that are, it's hard to see past them. First up, we've got Hiroki Miyazawa. I will butcher some of these names, but I'll do my best not to. From Consadole Sapporo. His last 5 games, 47, and his last 15, he's averaging 50. Again, a great foundation to build on. The lowest market price when I looked at this was 028. Again, if you can find one roughly about the £65 mark, if you could negotiate, put in offers, trade offers to that sort of a value, that should get you the player. The one that I've got here was a bonus of 1%, so it's not a huge bonus to add on to our team score here for the team underdogs, but it's certainly a starting point. The second midfielder we're going with is Tomoya Koyamatsu of Sagan Tosu. Again, it's a 2020 card, but this one does have, it does have a 0.5 bonus. It's not great, but the market price for him now, the ETH value of that has actually stayed the same as last week. However, the actual pounds value is about £15 to £20 less, so roughly about £50 at the moment on this lad. And to me, that's a bit of a bargain for a guy that plays quite consistently. Now he has had a couple of poorer scores. So his last 5 are averaging 39, but he is capable of higher scores. As you can see, his average for the last 15, 45. A player that could certainly pull, a 60 out of the bag or what have you, which would definitely contribute to getting towards the 205 or possibly towards the 250. The forward I'm going with here is Kenyu Sugimoto from Urawa Reds. Last 5, the problem with forwards is they're expensive. They're not as expensive as goalkeepers, but they are expensive. However, if you can find one that is playing consistently, not getting you DNPs, it's half the battle. Your midfielders and your defenders, when you're working on a budget, are the three, if you're playing 2 of one of them, are the ones that are really going to contribute the most to you for your overall score. Unless your forward gets a goal, gets an assist, and in which case it's a different story. Sugimoto plays all the time for Urawa, mostly as a substitute, but he does play all the time. His last 5 have been an average of 30, last 15 average of 30, so probably rely on this guy for about 30 points. The card that I picked out here, the lowest one on the market, was at about a 1% bonus. I've put a pounds value of about £60 on him. If you could find one around that price range, again, negotiate and see what you can find. But that's the 4 that I've gone with there for the low end team. I think that's a fair reflection of players. It does come in around the 0.1 mark, which I think on today's value is about £200. If you could hit the thresholds, get the returns, the percentage of your return is quite substantial when you look at building a team on the lower end. So I'm going to move on to the middle team. I've called them mid-range, but then I thought, well, we need a team name, so mid-range rovers. It's the best I could do. It's a Thursday afternoon. I'm coming off my COVID jab. I'm starting to feel human again. That's as good as it gets, really. So this is another keeper from my gallery, another common keeper. He's sitting with a minus 47.5%. I gave the one with the lowest penalty to the lowest team just to try and give it a little bit of a balance. So with this one, I've actually gone with 2 defenders on this one. In this sort of a price range, what I did was this was between 0.03 and 0.06. And defender-wise in that bracket, there are some very, very good players that you could pick up. Consistent players that are scoring 50 plus, some of them even higher, and they're playing all the time, and they're a good age, they're playing at good clubs. So you could definitely find some bargains here. There's one I don't have listed in the team, but it was touch and go, and it was purely to try and keep the budget within. But I'll go over him as well. So the first one, this is a guy I've actually been tracking for a little bit. I've just not had the budget available to me at the time to go and buy one. I have genuinely wanted to get him. I've made several trade offers a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it wasn't even a couple. It was last weekend, and he had a good game at that weekend. His price went up, and it's just it's just out with my budget at the moment. I will be tracking him. If he does have a few poor games and his value comes down, I will be looking to pick him up. Takuya Iwanami from Urawa Reds again. Urawa Reds do have several good players that score quite well. Worth having a look at that club if you're looking for someone. Last 5, average of 57. Last 15 of 56. And he's 100% play rate. The lowest one in the market was 0.06, which is roughly about £130, which is in line, give or take, with where he's been. The 2021 card's obviously slightly more expensive. But this one that I've picked out has a bonus of 1%. He is a very, very solid, very, very consistent, and for me, a safe player if you were looking to build on the budget, trying to pick out one extra player to move up to the next range. This would be one I would really look at. 1% bonus, as I say, on this one. Only 25. I think he's actually 26 now. But it's a great base for your team. The next one, again, quite similar. Hwang Suk Ho, South Korean, playing in the J League for Sagan Tosu. He is coming in at only 0.042. Now, he had a bit of a mare in his last game there. However, overall, last 5, 47, but the last 15, 56. He plays all the time. That is coming in roughly, when you look at the market value, he's probably valued about £95 to £100. Now, for a defender that you're able to get a 2021 card, get the 5% boost on him, playing all the time. Again, this is another defender. In fact, all 3 of the defenders I'm going to mention were players that I've been tracking. This was actually quite easy for me to find these. I did the same search that I do all the time, and these are the 3 that always come up right at the top. So if you could pick this guy up for sub £100, more power to you. I think he would do anybody a good job. The other defender, which I don't have in the slides, is Gotoku Sakai from Kobe. Vissel Kobe. He is available in the 0.053 range, which again is about £135 to £140. His last 5, 51, last 15, 55. Plays for a good team. Very, very, very consistent in terms of the scores. Those 3, I can't see how you could go wrong with any of those 3 defenders. But for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to go with the 2, and I'm going to go with Imanami and Suiko purely on the budget basis. Otherwise, I would probably went with Sakai over Suiko, but it is what it is. Midfield, I'm looking at Heiyo Kawabe from Sanfrecce Hiroshima. The last 5 games for him, 45, last 15, 51. Again, a midfielder, mid-20s. Price-wise, sitting at 0.05. Looking back, touching the pound value to him, probably 100 to 110. If you could pick one up at around that sort of a price range, then it's going to stand you in good stead. The one that I actually found had its bonus built up again already to 5%, which for a 2020 card looked pretty solid. Now, again, you do have multiple choices at this one. I've went with the ones that are playing all the time, the ones that are consistently there or thereabouts. The mid-range Rovers midfielder hopefully does the business. Forwards, I've gone with Yoshiro Kakitane. Last 5, 40, last 15, 40. Again, forwards, they could go off, they could go, they could go great guns, score 2 goals, get 3 assists, they can go off. They can also have very quiet games and maybe only score you 30 points. But consistently, this lad's pulling in about 40. The market value price on him was 0.056. Looking on the prices, pound wise, about 115 to 120 pounds I would probably allocate to here. Bonus on being a 2021 card, sitting at 5%. And again, it's just a very solid card. It's hard to say anything negative about it. You would wish that your forwards would score higher. However, you need one in your team, and it's better to have one that's scoring 40 than DNP. You can take a gamble on ones. There are lads out there this week, like Douglas Vieira's coming back from a long-term injury, or being long-term out, that played in the Cup in midweek, but it's not a guarantee to play this weekend. based on the data, these guys are ones that are playing all the time. So that's why I've went with this. I've tried to play it safe for everybody. So if anybody does want to pick up any of these players, it's always at a risk. You know, they could pull up lame, they could DNP for whatever reason, they could fall out with a manager, you know, anything like that. But conversely, they could go off, you know, guns blazing, scoring goals and assists. So we all know the gambles within there. So the average based on those 4 players is coming to 189 points. They've got Galeese in the goal, who's the goalkeeper for Orlando, although he has the penalty. So this team should comfortably hit the 205 and be pushing for the 250. I'd be surprised if they didn't get towards the 250. But we'll see. We'll see how that one goes. Heading on to the high end, I've called them the top team originally, but this is what we've gone with. So we've got Clement Diop in the goal. Again, another card that I've been fortunate to pick up. The goalkeeper for Montreal, I believe. Penalty of 47.5 again. So the top team, I've went with 2 midfielders on this one. Again, price is based on the market as of this morning. First defender, no-brainer, absolutely no-brainer. Tamaki Makino from Urawa again. Last 5 games, an average of 67. Last 15, an average of 58. The lowest market price there was 0.82, bonus of 2%. That card, I honestly feel, is slightly underpriced at that price. Pounds-wise, 150 to 160 pounds. If you could pick up one of those for that price or there or thereabouts, I would find it hard to believe that he's not going to consistently score in the mid to high 50s. Very, very solid player. Bonus on this particular card, 2%. Another one I'd love to have in my team. He's just that bit out my price range at the moment. Gallery's building up though. If one of my goalkeepers gets a game this week and their value skyrockets, I know where I'm going to be looking to invest some of my returns off those players. Midfield, we've gone with 2. We've got Kia Sento from Sagantoso as well. Last 5 of 52, last 15 of 51. 26 years old. It's a 2021 card that was the cheapest one on the market. And my presentation's actually changed the bonus from 7% that he was to 0.07, but it's a 7% one. I've just noticed that. I should have really proofread that a little bit better. However, that's a 7% bonus on him. And 0.069 was the lowest one on the market. It's £140 now. I actually feel that's slightly overpriced, but when you look at the data of the ones that are playing all the time and everything like that, for that £140, you could possibly put it into somebody like, if you can get one cheap enough, like Yamato Machida or that sort of a player. However, I actually didn't want to continually be putting in players that I've talked about before. I want to talk about some different players. So I've gone with Keio Sento on this one. I do feel it's slightly overpriced at about the £140 mark. So if you can negotiate that down, give yourself a little bit of breathing space with him, great. But he is capable of getting some decent scores. The other midfielder I went with, I actually think this is, again, I don't think this one's underpriced. Kento Misao, my second Misao of the video. His last 5 he's averaging 57 for Kashima Antlers. Last 15 of 51. The lowest market price was 0.82. Roughly about £180 price bracket based on the last few sales over the course of the last week and a bit, and roughly where he's sitting on the market. So again, I would definitely look to try and negotiate that down where possible. The bonus on him is 1%, so it's not a huge bonus to have on a card of that value. However, you would build that up over time. Yes, it's again, the prices when you get to this price range, you could buy, higher or similar priced cards that aren't guaranteed to be playing, or cards that are slightly cheaper but have maybe missed 4 or 5. I haven't looked at those players in the course of these videos because I don't want to necessarily take a chance on somebody buying one of those cards and having some hard feelings towards me personally if they've spent a good chunk of money, 120, 130, 140 pounds on a player, that then doesn't play, or and then they feel let down. So I've tried to play it safe with these videos. I will go through a video soon looking at players that have maybe been on long-term injury, worth having a look at, worth seeing if you could pick up at a decent price, and speculate. So I will look at some of those players in the future, but for now I'm going to try and keep it safe and work within. The forward I've gone here is Yuki Soma, I believe Scotland Sorare. Russell picked one of these up through the course of the week. It's somebody that I did have a look at before as a potential to play up front. Great age, just been called up to the Japanese under-23 squad. I've seen on the Sorare Japan page today. Last 5 games 40, last 15 of 44, 2021 card, so it's a bonus of 5%. So that is a very, very good card. He has missed 1 game in the last 5. However, he is a regular. He's playing for Grampus, Nagoya Grampus. He is a very good card, and the age counts for him as well. He does have a bright future. As I say, he's in the national under-23s. I can't imagine he's not far away from knocking on the door of progressing, over the next 2 or 3 years into the full team. But he does regularly play for Nagoya. Definitely worth having a look at. If you've got the funds to have, a player like that sitting at your club to speculate, I would look at it. £180 give or take, and I would definitely see what you could do within there. So that's the 4 teams. The 4 players for this team. The average for them for the last 5 games comes to 216, which would clear the 205 threshold on their own without a keeper. So Diop, he usually brings in about 50-55, so you're going to get half of that allocated. So that's going to be touch and go for hitting the threshold. But I just think it's very interesting to look at, you could spend high and get, try and push yourself to guarantee that high end reward in terms of the threshold. If you have an actual, a rare goalkeeper, you could certainly then be pushing towards the prizes. So I think it'll be interesting this week to see. The great thing about the J League this week is we have midweek fixtures coming up next week. So if you're looking to assemble a team for the first time, you're actually going to get, you're going to get this weekend, you're going to get midweek, and then you've got, so you are getting plenty of opportunity, with these players right out the bat. So just in closing for the video this week, I just want to say thank you for everybody that's followed. Last week was great. The follows on Twitter, the interactions on Twitter. I'm getting messages on Discord, I get messages on Twitter. It's been quite humbling. As somebody who came into the game very, very dubious, researched everything, and obviously on the podcast last week with Hybe and You'll Never Walk Alone, I got quite a lot of positive feedback, and it actually made me feel, pretty positive about things, and it made me want to do more to contribute. So if anybody has any more ideas for upcoming videos, I've got a few written down that were suggested on Twitter. I've got a few more of my own to go in there as well. If I can do more than one a week, based on my work and based on days off and based on neighbours not doing DIY every day till 5-6 o'clock, I'll certainly look at doing more content. I will continually be posting on Twitter. Hopefully it interests you. If it doesn't, grand. If you've got any feedback for me, feel free to send it over on Twitter, on Discord, wherever, and I will take things on board, and I will work towards making things better and trying to help out a bit more. If you've not signed up for Sorare and you are a first time watcher, and this has maybe inspired you to go and sign up and have a look at what you can do on a low end budget, my referral code's there, sorare.com/r/Sorare on a budget. I did just change my gamer tag, I guess you would call it, or the nickname to Sorare on a budget, just to keep it uniform and keep everything within the same boundaries. And obviously, most of you'll know me from Twitter at Sorare on a budget. So that's the video for this week. I've tried to keep it under 30 minutes. I'm just about hitting that mark. And if you've got any feedback, I'd love to get it. I'd love to hear what people think of these. It's obviously, I think this is a bit of progress based on last week. And if you have any feedback, get in touch. Good luck with your game weeks this weekend, and I will talk to you all again next week.